I want to welcome everybody to the very last event. Oh, no, it's not. To the third to last event on the last night of the Spring Rights Literary Festival. I'm Robin Schwartz. I'm the Program and Grant Director of the Community Arts Partnership of Tompkins County. And this Spring Rights Literary Festival is actually one of many events that we do, one of our many programs. We have grants. We've given like $4.6 million to local arts and arts organizations since our beginnings. We do workshops, networking events, and a fundraiser that's coming up, and a whole bunch of other programs. So there are 2 more events after this one tonight, and then we're done with the November Spring Rights programs. However, we do have 8 workshops that happen from December through March, and you should check those out on springrights.org. It's all free and it's all virtual. So a tiny little plug for our next event, which is Capapalooza. Capapalooza is our annual fundraiser where I ask people to give me used art, basically the art that's in their closets and their basements, you know, the art that you inherited, the art that your relatives gave you that you don't like, the presents you got, that sort of thing. And it ends up with this really cool, eclectic, vintagey sort of fun sale with prices really low because I want to sell everything in 3 days. Right now, there are 400 pieces that came in yesterday and today. Saturday is also First Saturday on the Greater Ithaca Art Trail. Artists open their studios to you. I will put all my websites up into the chat. I want to quickly thank our Spring Rights sponsors, which was Ithaca College, Wegmans, M&T Bank, the Odyssey Bookstore on Green Street, and the Ithaca Marriott. And we also got funds from the New York State Council on the Arts and Poets and Writers. We would love it if you could actually donate, if you can, to the Community Arts Partnership. I was going to do a suggested donation for Spring Rights, but then I decided it was a bad idea and it would discourage some people from coming. So we made this a free event, but of course we need money. So I'm going to put the link up, and if you can donate to the Community Arts Partnership, any amount is just fine. That would be amazing. Lastly, you guys are all going to be on mute throughout the events, and you would use the chat function. If you don't know what that is, there should be a little button somewhere on the bottom or the top of your screen that says chat. You can talk to everyone on the call, or you could just talk to specific people. But, you know, while the readers, the upcoming readers are reading, you want to put in comments or questions or say how much you love it. That's fun. And that's how we communicate on these muted Zoom calls. So thank you very much. And I am now going to turn the mic over to Mickie Quinn. Hi, Mickie.
Hello. Hi. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Good. Well, thanks for having me be a part of this. Robin invited me after seeing a video that I made for Flame Night Fever, which is a virtual drag and burlesque show. I did a piece called Lenore based on the works of Edgar Allen Poe. The idea for this came a couple of years ago as the seeds started getting planted. I was invited over to a friend's house. She was having a Halloween dinner and had a little open mic, and I'm not a musician, so I don't have much to contribute to that. Then I decided to look up some, you know, scary poetry, and I was reading that as, you know, my little, you know, creative offering to the evening, and it was really fun. And last year I was invited to be a part of a Halloween show. October is always a very, very busy month for me. So I asked if it would be okay if I read some poetry. And so I did, and I chose Edgar Allan Poe, whose words are just so delightful to say. And they just work so well in my mouth, and they're macabre and they're dramatic, and yeah, I really enjoyed that. So with Flame Night Fever, which has been very successful, has been bringing together the communities locally, regionally, nationally, and I submitted my idea of doing this next piece where I took 2 of Edgar Allan Poe's poems and I connected them, and I shot it with a couple of my friends. I have, well, you'll see the credits at the end, but I had some help. I did all the styling myself, and so it was really fun to connect storytelling with costuming and video editing and putting it all together in this performance, which you can roll.
All broken is the golden bowl, spirit flown forever. And let the bell toll, a saintly soul floats on the Stygian river. Guy de Vere, hath thou no tear? Weep now or nevermore. See, on your drear and rigid bier, lo, lies thy love, Lenore. Come, let the burial rite be read, the funeral song be sung, an anthem for the queenliest stead that ever died so young, a dirge for her, the doubly dead, and that she died so young. Peck of a miss, yet rave not thus, but let a Sabbath song go up to God, so solemnly the dead feel no wrong. The sweet Lenore hath gone before, with hope that flew beside, leaving thee wild for the dear child that should have been thy bride. For her the fair and debonair that now so lowly lies, the life upon her yellow hair, but not within her eyes. The life still there upon her hair, the death upon her eyes. Avaunt, avaunt from fiends below, the indignant ghost is riven from hell unto a high estate, far up within the heaven, from grief and groan to a golden throne beside the King of heaven. Let no bell toll then, lest her soul amid its hollow mirth should catch the note as it doth float from this damned earth. And I, tonight my heart is light, no dirge will I upraise, but waft the angel on her flight, a paean of old days. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had bought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant woman whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no more. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that scarce I was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken, the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echoed murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Once here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obseisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon the bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. Perched and sat, and nothing more. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he has sent thee, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven he bends above us, by that God we both adore. Tell the soul with sorrow laden, if written with the distant Aden, if that clasp a saint and maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, who the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight over him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly. Why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly. No place big enough for holding all the tears you're gonna cry.
That was amazing. Wow, you are so talented.
Thank you. It
Yeah, you've got a lot of nice compliments in the chat. Wow, that was so good. How is it watching it?
It's fun to watch because I really it's been a while since I've been able to take the time and really focus on something that I wanted to make, and it was just, you know, anyone who's an artist of any form here will know that feeling of just it just infects you until you get to make it, and then you're just so happy to see it made. And yeah, I'm happy with how it came out. I had lots of great helpers. There's lots of other footage. I had to fit it into under 8 minutes, so that informed a lot of the decision making. There could have been a whole extended version with the dog, who ended up being a really great actress. That will be in the director's cut on the DVD version coming out later next year. But,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next up is Andy Sanchez.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for, I just want to say thanks to Robin and the Community Arts Project and all the other readers and Mickie for your work as well, the video work. I think it's just, you know, especially with everything going on, it's it's really nice to be able to get together and to share work together and to just hear all kinds of good stuff and to, to hear Edgar Allan Poe's work, read aloud, the great sounds there. It's really nice to feel the community again. So thank you very much for putting this together. I'm going to be reading mostly poetry. This first one is sort of something between a poem. It's not quite poetry and it's not quite prose. It's sort of just trying to capture a moment. It's called Acá entre nos, which means just between us. So there was this waitress, big eyes, like someone you'd see in an old photograph wearing a lace dress the color of snow. She had the kind of eyes where you knew she was everybody's favorite niece growing up. Probably still is. She was everybody's favorite waitress. Talked with her hands. I once saw her fix the spaghetti strap on this lady's sunburned shoulder mid-sentence like it was her own. Didn't even blink. You had dinner yet? I asked. She smiled. We sat on plastic lawn chairs, enjoying the shade of a dirty yellow umbrella. She hummed along with the Chente songs on the radio, songs that made me think of my grandfather. He would squint his eyes and let his cigarette go out as he rocked in his old wicker chair on the porch. He'd stare straight ahead and say, "You hear that? You hear him sing? He's dying. That man cannot live without love." She closed her eyes as the man died, folded her napkin again and again, and started singing. Behind us, the sun sank like a dream, drowsy gold peeking through the swaying trees, warming the wooden table. She sang sweet. I felt like I had nothing but time, like I was at home in that stillness, in that sun, and that soft sound of her voice dancing with the radio. I let the ice cubes melt. This next one's more of a regular poem. I had a series where I was sort of just I was sort of struggling to write, but I kept having these like funky dreams, and I would just try to turn them into poems. And so this is from that series. I have a dream the flight to Mexico is so much harder. Hours, overnight. It requires some bit of magic. They're singing on the plane, and everyone is tired. My sister and I are going, but we need our mother like the moon, reliable, separate. My sister tells other passengers stories, how I paid too much for bonbons. We arrive finally, but people keep us from getting on the jet bridge. A fight to even arrive. The avalanches are on the stereo, and I am excited, sweating. No one is sitting next to me. I dug up the tree in my father's back lawn. Lightning, rot, the frozen elm cast in winter, left a skeleton. I've been gone for months, only to find it dead now, to find a shovel in my hands. Here, son, take care of that since you're home. Heat on me, stamping my neck closer to that cool dirt and its sounds. Sift, check, gulp. I opened the earth and let in what I couldn't say, Dad watching from the window. This last one is from a collection that I've been working on. It's sort of, my family and I had gone on this trip to, my family's from Mexico, and we had gone on this trip that was sort of a nightmare of a trip. It was sort of laughably bad, just we were fighting the whole time. But there was, I had this feeling of just sort of imagining the version of the trip that, we all wanted, the version of the trip where everything worked out, where things weren't like filled with like either frustration or pettiness or, little fights or old wounds. And so this poem is sort of me imagining that version of the trip. It's called Negation. In another year, another life, we all go back to Mexico. It never happened like this, but this time my father is with us and we visit my mother's family together. We talk. We're somewhere inland, away from borders, oceans. There's no escape and nothing on the other side. We all want to be there. It isn't just a weekend. We can all speak Spanish, and I make a lot of jokes. I cook with my father. He doesn't keep recipes hidden from me or tell me how much we're going to miss his cooking when he's gone. He hands me some adobo for the pork. He lets me drive the car. He doesn't point out billboards, huff or puff. We listen to music. He dances. We all do, but he's got the rhythm. Opens his chest and bellows, the whole thing tribal. We're old and young, circling around, grabbing each other by the shoulder and saying a prayer. Everything caught in black and white. We keep this picture. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Take care. Just in case I'm supposed to hand it off to the next writer, our next writer is Kate Doyle.
Hi, thank you. Andy, that was wonderful. And thanks to Robin and everyone at Spring Writes and all the other readers. I'm going to read a short story from a collection I'm writing called I Meant It Once. Stories are all kind of about people who know each other over a long period of time, siblings and old friends, and in this case, a couple. The story is about some people being stuck together in an apartment during a snowstorm for a couple days, I think, and which seems like a very quaint amount of time to be together in an apartment after all we've been through this year. But I wrote that. I started a couple years ago. Yeah, so the story is called There's No Telling. All I wanted was Chinese food, but it was snowing in New York. I said to Ben, if we don't eat Chinese food, there's no telling what I'll do. I meant it as a joke. We were in the middle of an argument about something else, and I wanted to lighten the mood. Ben liked doing things to prove how good a person he was, a behavior he seemed to think I'd warm to. He nicely said he would get me Chinese food, and I said, don't be ridiculous. You don't have to be so kind to everyone, I would often say. What about humility, I would say. What about letting someone else be the nicest? Another problem between us at this point was our disagreement about who to vote for in an upcoming local election. Ben said he intended to vote for a female candidate, and I felt he was pandering to me by continuing to mention that. Now Ben had locked himself in the bathroom, and I was looking out our window. 24 inches were projected. Public transit was down. Earlier at the store, Ben and I had disagreed about what to stock up on for the storm. He was an impulse buyer, so he walked along aisles, adding ice cream, frozen pizza, wasabi-flavored chips to our cart. Later, at home, one of the bags split open. The container of ice cream rolled away across the floor. I was enraged despite the fact that nothing had spilled. It felt like a sign that we had taken more than our share, and I didn't want to be indulgent, a value which, in theory, Ben shared. But when I started fuming, he furrowed his brow like I was being confusing. He said, I think you should pick up the ice cream from under the coffee table and calm down. I started shouting. So now he was in the bathroom with the door locked, perhaps to punish me. We were at an impasse. I was finding living together difficult in ways I hadn't expected. Soon I heard Ben's phone ring from the other side of the bathroom door. I leaned my forehead on the glass of the window and closed my eyes because I hated being the kind of people who brought our phones to the bathroom. I thought it was important in life to be able to pass time undistracted, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. Ben had been the front man in a band before he knew me, so there were times he could amuse himself by singing, and I envied him for that. Now, from the sound of his voice on the phone, certain muffled jokes through the closed door, I could tell it was Ben's old bandmate, Mara, calling. Mara was someone I liked in theory. When Ben emerged from the bathroom, he looked happier than he had all day. Mara was stranded. Mara was meant to transfer planes, but her flight was canceled. Mara had persuaded a taxi driver to take her to our place. Ben was thrilled because Ben loved to help. He was glowing with self-regard. I was privately displeased at the thought of Mara coming over for our blizzard. Ben said Mara couldn't wait to see me, and I knew I should say something nice in return, that it would be the right thing. Instead, I told him, okay, well, I'll look for the spare sheets. Sometimes I theorized I was disturbed by his niceness because it made my own less niceness so legible, threw my qualities into sharp relief. I said to him, do we even have a clean towel? Ben said he hadn't thought of that. He went into our room to look for one, singing to himself. He had a spacey side. He had once referred to the detectives, quote, Sherlock and Holmes. He had trouble remembering if our apartment was on the front or back side of the building. He had to stop and visualize it. I often wondered if he was paying attention enough to notice the important things, the data points required to make certain judgments of character. I knew I was supposed to love Mara out of loyalty to Ben, but while I stepped on the pump for the air mattress, listening to its high whir and watching the mattress rediscover its own form, I was just thinking I didn't want to share the ice cream. Moments ago, I wished he hadn't bought it. Now it felt like a prize I would have to defend. When she arrived, Mara looked different than I remembered. It was years since I'd seen her, and now her hair was cut shorter. She was wearing a green sweater I wouldn't have guessed was her taste, but it suited her. Though she had never been to New York, Mara said something in the air here gave her an intuition she belonged. Maybe she would never leave. I gave Ben a look, but he was hanging up Mara's coat. On our windowsill, snow was accumulating in a thin line, rising higher and higher. The sun was going down, and dusk light suffused the apartment. Suddenly, I needed to be alone. I said, I'm going to take a walk before I can't. I did not ask if they wanted to come, but Mara said that honestly, she was dying to stretch her legs. She didn't have winter clothes, so we had to loan her what we had. Ben gave her a pair of his wool socks, which she wore inside my rain boots. I let her wear my red hat because Ben's hat was too big. Ben offered to stay behind. I'll figure out dinner, he said magnanimously. Mara and I traipsed off. Our feet stamped prints along the sidewalk. Her face acquired a healthy glow. Once, when Ben and I were first dating, I burned the dinner I was making for us. It was summer and desperately hot. Ben opened my windows. Ben stood on a chair and waved a towel in front of my smoke detector. Ben was so happy to be able to help. I sat on the floor and I cried. Ben said, let me sing to you. He was standing on one of my kitchen bar stools, holding the worn dishcloth. He sang silly pop songs to make me laugh. He changed the lyrics to be about us. Smoke cleared from the room. Later, sitting beside me on the floor, Ben put his arm around me. Both of us were sweating. Ben said, honestly, I think we can salvage that. And he nodded at the blackened whole chickens still seething in the open mouth of the oven. It made me laugh so much. I thought he was being funny. But lately, I'd been replaying the memory, and I'd started to wonder if he'd meant it sincerely. Earlier, in the grocery store, examining a box of cereal, Ben had asked me out of nowhere what year Sherlock and Holmes was first published. I said, we've been over this. They aren't called that. Ben said, I say it to make you laugh. And I said, but it never does. It was growing dark around us. Mara and I passed in and out of pooled light of street lamps, which illuminated tall columns of whirling snow. It caught in our scarves and flew in our eyes. We kept walking. She wanted to tell me about the pet bird she'd had, a parakeet, back when she and Ben and the other guys were in the band together. She said every time she saw Ben, like tonight, for example, she would think of that bird. Ben used to put it in his shirt pocket and speak to it attentively, she said, like it was a person. Ben would say to the bird, how is life treating you? I said that sounded confining for the bird. In the pause that followed, I thought how this was exactly the sort of mistrustful thing someone like me would say. In general, Ben was tired of me implying I was smarter, and in fact, I knew nothing about birds. It was easy to think Ben could have been in love with Mara back when they were in the band together, but he was too nice a person to ever be candid with me about something like that, so I was left to imagine it myself. I was on the verge of saying sorry for being unreceptive to the bird anecdote when Mara realized one of her mittens, my mittens, was lost. She'd put them in her pocket because she wanted to hold snow in her bare hands. I'm from California, this is a big deal for me, she said, which I thought was ridiculous. We retraced our steps all the way home, Mara apologizing repeatedly, me insisting it was definitely okay as I scanned the sidewalks. At home, I unlocked the door airily, inventing reasons it was not a problem. I said the mittens were old. I said I never liked them that much. I said I needed new ones anyway. In the kitchen of our apartment, Ben was laying out foil containers of food. For a moment, I was grateful. I loved him. Then Mara said, oh my God, Kung Pao chicken, you're a genius. Then I felt my sentiments sour. I felt defensive and irritated. I said to Ben, for God's sake, I told you not to. It's snowing. This isn't necessary. He was hurt. It was obvious. I saw the wounded look come over his face, and then I saw him rearrange his features like I wouldn't notice. Oh no, said Mara. Oh no, he's sad. and she started to sing him a song, which I realized was not unlike a song Ben once sang to me, standing on a bar stool the night I burned our dinner. I pictured that parakeet straining in Ben's pocket a long time ago, before I ever knew him. I realized I hoped that the bird had been dead for years. There was a framed photo of their band he kept on our dresser. Ben in a t-shirt that fit him so well, with a shorter hair, a much younger face. Mara in a low-cut dress that showed her collarbone. On our walk, she said to me, affectionate, your boyfriend was always such an asshole to me. He used to tell my jokes at gigs and take credit for the laughs. Her cheeks were red with cold like flowers. As she said this, I realized I could not imagine Ben and all his kindness doing any such thing to me. I longed for it. I made myself a plate of Chinese food and took it to the bathroom. I turned the lock and sat with my back against the tub, slipped my chopsticks from their paper sleeve, and imagined Ben banging on the door, impassioned, pleading, and annoyed. I imagined it for hours. As our bathroom window filled up with snow, it was something the way I imagined drowning might be. I ate kung pao chicken with chopsticks and listened to Ben and Mara's muffled voices catch up. I listened to them get to know one another all over again. Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to pass it on to the next person, but thanks, this was great.
Thank you. And thank you before that to Andy. So next up, we've got on the screen Gwen Davis-Feldman. Take it away, Gwen.
Thank you. I'm reading 3 pieces, 2 poems, and a coda for my recently completed novel. The first poem is titled, The Doe is Dead. I saw her from the bridge, honey brown against the rocky river's edge, unconcerned now, slender neck stretched and wanting to taste cold liquid before her end. She fell 300 yards from the road. After the corn, the trees, the pebbled shore, just before the water and loss of her animal freedom. I wondered if her babies are safe. It's been a season of twins. 2020 trouble is doubled with the work of living. Yet she fell silent. No wailing at failed instincts, no pleading redemption for her animal freedom. I see her again the next day, still at the river, nose still reaching for water, fading tawny body swelling with July's sun. On the 3rd day, I don't look, fearing a post-mortem reading, nature's will, its natural and unnatural mutilation. What did she bequeath her fawns? Knowledge about America? Its new world power structures, its lies, its religion that says her soul should be gone now, leaving nothing but attitude formed on the winds of rot? Arrogance? Yes. I want something more for her fawns and faded dappling standing in the road center, motherless but not forlorn. On the 4th day, I want to sharpen their instincts, tell them to find their niche and stay there. Frightened by my well-intentioned hubris, listening only to nature, the fawns scatter, running like their mother, absorbed in their own animal freedom. The next poem is To the Black Man Who Alarms a White Woman in Central Park. She can tell by the color of your skin that you are armed and dangerous, armed with camera and dangerous with calm and your ability to reveal her to the world. You frighten her more than her attempts to scare you. She throws her last javelin, the threat of cops. She knows their ilk and the milk of hostility that can run in their veins. For you and your frightening Black skin, she has 911 on speed dial. Like the antebellum Southern belle, confident every Black man wants her to hurt. She is certain the tremble in her voice will unleash her powerful white privilege. For a few minutes and a request, she wants to see you lynched for your insolence, impudence, audacity, to expect her to see you, a Black man, as human. Someone should take her pitiable ignorance aside, remind her that if Jim Crow and all his inhumane power could not kill you, the Black man, she has a snowball's chance in hell of doing so. As this ends, you remain the human who forgives, the human that has stayed the hands of Black retribution for centuries, the hand that has not moved in spite of white might and fears of reprisal. You, the human, can forgive. Okay. This next piece is from my recently completed novel, At Home in Exile. Eve Lapointe, a children's book author, has pulled herself up from the floor where we first meet her, battered and knocked unconscious by life that has tormented her with the abandonment of her husband and sons and the death of her only sibling. This coda marks the passage of 2 years with Eve Lapointe finding herself on the Camino de Santiago, a final test in her search for redemption and grace. Coda. Eve called Paul to tell him of her change in flight plans. No longer was she flying back to Newark. In 2 days, she would land in Toronto and face her boys, her sons she had abandoned long before they had abandoned her. Paul could tell from the sound of Eve's voice that walking the Camino had been the medicine she needed. He listened as she told him about the beautiful manicured vineyards and the nearly undrinkable wines they produced. There was the friendly teasing of the Irish brothers who took this trek every year. She relived her first day of walking and the pain that made her want to trade her legs for someone's wheelchair, and the soothing coolness of the foot baths along the hot trail through Caldereas. There was the drenching rain and the wind that had forced her to recognize what she couldn't control. There was nothing else for her to do but walk forward. She spoke of the steep boulder-strewn trail leading up and away from the sweet seaside village of Arcade. She could laugh at her fear at being cornered by the wild pig and her relief at being saved by the stray dogs that came between the pig and her lunch. She told Paul about the chickens of Padron, staring at her, and how she had called them stupid as she fumbled with her maps, lost 1 block from the Ilmark Pension. She got the last room, the one with the window open to the painful sounds of Spain's very own Smokey Robinson, blaring over a football practice field. She told him of the laundromat in Pontevedra, her clothes left damp because of her misunderstanding of the Galician dialect. No way was this Spanish. But all of her problems were diminished in the shadow of the story of Sebastian, the old Frenchman who had struck out 2 months earlier on the Camino Francais, his 500-mile walk of personal redemption. She had not met the 75-year-old Sebastian on her own minimal 100-mile trek, and she had had a hard time separating Sebastian's life facts from fiction, but it didn't matter. With every communal meal, pieces of his story were passed around like a necessary condiment, the inspiration that kept a pilgrim's feet to the road, a supporting push from the back, a hand for the fallen. Sebastian was the talk of Santiago by the time Eve arrived. She was standing in line to get her pilgrim credentials when she heard Sebastian was to arrive in Santiago late the following day. That night and all the next day, she pondered what she had heard in the rumors surrounding Sebastian's life. In her diary, she recorded the rejection, death, grief, despair, all that gave the human heart excuse to surrender. Catastrophe exiles us to caves of loneliness, and we stay until we die, or until we find someone to help us drag our love-torn souls into the light. Eve placed the purple ribbon page marker over the last words in her diary. She surveyed her comfortable room in the old castle turned Hotel Montenegro. How different this posh extravagance from the merely serviceable sleeping arrangements she had endured on the Camino. The old voice rose up to tell her she didn't deserve any of this. But that old voice was for the old Eve, not this one. Eve gently closed her diary before checking her watch. It was time to join her friends who had arrived the day before. Eve and the Irish brothers were hoisting sangria, toasting their Camino success when a hush came over all the other revelers as they stared from their seats in the courtyard on the edge of Old Town Santiago. "Shh," said Donovan to his brother in mid-toast. "There's Sebastian now." Eve stood up to better see the impossibly thin old man coming into view. The crowd erupted into deafening cheers as Sebastian slump walked across the ancient cobblestones into Old Town, weighted down with his life on his back, yet held up with a walking stick as tall as he was. Sebastian, the tired and ragged Gandhi of Galicia, was stopped in his tracks by the roaring of the crowd, surprised that the cheers were for him. He waved a skinny, unwashed arm at all the tidy pilgrims, anointing them with all his strength and resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. So was the virtual background you had at the beginning because of the piece you read?
Yeah, that was a picture of the dough, but I realized my hair, had a case of the disappearing hair, and every time I turned, because I have no filter, and every time I turned, it was like, what happened to her hair? So,
I know.
yeah.
That virtual background doesn't always work for people.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That was great. Thank you. So next up is Lizzie Frank. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me. Thanks to everybody who read and Mickie who shared the video. That was a wonderful video. But thanks most of all to Robin. After this got canceled in the spring, so glad that she worked so hard to put it back on in November. I'm going to read about the first third of a piece called Skyborg. And the beginning and the end of the section I'm going to read mention like hospitals and needles. So that's something that stresses you out. Just a warning. The second time Asher woke up after the surgery, it was just his stiffly bandaged body in the lumpy hospital cot, a slightly elevated chorus of beeping machines, and his mother. She was standing against the farthest wall, clutching her handbag to her chest. Her eyes weren't on Asher, but scanning the room's curtained entrance, as if the unpatterned blue would help her distinguish the voices of nurses chattering at the desk. In the hall beyond, someone hurried by, causing the curtains to waver. Snatches of light singed Asher's eyes, and a blood pressure cuff cinched around his bicep. For 14 years, Asher had perfected the art of abandoning his body. It was the only way to cope with the big farmhouse that held just him and his mother. It was especially the only way to cope on the frequent occasions that Asher was sick, when his mother force-fed him soup and cold medicine, and his bedroom door triple locked from the outside. But now Asher was acutely aware of his body, and he couldn't escape the spinning feeling in his head, the plaster bandages locked around his elbows and knees, and the gritty dryness filling his mouth from teeth to tonsils. "Mama," he moaned. He felt two bijou bird wings flutter inside his chest. His mother didn't look. "Ma." His voice strained out of his chest like the broken down tractor that had to be leveraged from his Uncle John's body when they found him. His mouth was dry, gritty, and had the taste of driveway sand. Asher gripped tightly to the starched hospital bed sheets and attempted to pull himself into a sitting position. His mother's face was pressed over him in an instant. He saw her like she was looking through a window at him, with her cheeks smushed flat. Her fingers dug into him, painfully cold to the core. Not dissolvable like ice, but as bitingly frigid as the stones Asher pulled from February planting fields. "It's all going to be okay, baby," she purred. Asher bent his neck, tried to push back. His mother gripped both of his wrists around one of her hands. Pain shot up from the needles embedded in the back of his hands. "Mama," he said again, because that was all his twisted, bloody mouth felt capable of saying. Why did you let the doctors do that to me? His name was Asher McLeod, and when he was 14 years old, he was struck by lightning. When he was 5, his father died and his mother pulled him out of school in favor of kitchen table textbooks. Asher's final report card noted that he excelled in handwriting, but struggled to follow direction during physical education. At age 9, his mother found Asher driving Barbies around in plastic trucks under the porch, messily dressed in his Uncle John's decades-old school clothes Asher had pulled from a cardboard box in the attic, a short-sleeved gray button-down and black wool shorts. When you were born, Asher's mama, Peg, had told him over dinner after he spent the day reading about the invention of the flu vaccine and how to recognize an integer. It was high noon, and the sun went completely black. She leaned over her plate toward him as she told the story in a stage whisper. A plague killed all the flowers in the front garden. The barn cats clawed out their own eyes. Here she swiped at Asher performatively, and he shrunk into his wobbly wooden stool. When your Uncle John went to feed the sheep the next morning, there was even a headless rooster hanging above the door. You crazy cow, Uncle John declared in a bellowing laugh, which warmed Asher's chilled core like hot chocolate. It wasn't the end of days. Kid was born during a bad thunderstorm, that's it. Headless rooster nonsense, he'd added in a low voice, meant only for Asher, and tipped back the end of his beer bottle. Asher stifled giggles into a stained dinner napkin, and Uncle John broke in with his hearty, table-shaking laugh. He reached across the warped oak table to ruffle Asher's hair. Asher's mama would harumph and cross her arms and think she was punishing them by withholding conversation for about 5 minutes. 5 months later, Uncle John tipped a plow while drunk and was slowly crushed to death over the course of 2.5 days. Then it was just him and his mama in the house, just him and mama. Asher got sick more often too. His mama took his temperature every night and most mornings, and she took real good care of him, brought his school books into the bedroom and made him soup. A year later, his mama found him in Uncle John's old clothes again. Asher got sick more often and for longer. His mother took an administration job at a hospital 40 minutes away. When she left, she locked Asher's bedroom door behind her. On the night of the thunderstorm, he hadn't wanted to break the rules, but he was hungry. He'd escaped his room using a magnet, a wire hanger, and 3 hours of diligent hyperfocus. Asher snuck down the stairs and stood at the open kitchen window, crunching on an apple. The window in Asher's second-story bedroom was painted shut and barred. His mother said that he'd let pollen into his room and develop allergies. It was too bad. Asher loved to smell the sky. When he saw the black storm clouds rolling in, and when he'd heard the low rumble like the sound of his Uncle John pulling the tractor into the alfalfa field, Asher had wriggled off his countertop seat, apple in hand, and went to the door. As he pushed through, it had started to rain. That night, 2 months after his 14th birthday, Asher was struck by lightning in the alfalfa field where his Uncle John had bid it. The electricity coursed into him through his skull, and it spoke to him in a voice unlike any voice and a language unlike any language. The lightning spoke to Asher in a way no one had ever spoken to him. Not his old teachers or the other kids at school, not his Uncle John, not his mama, not how Asher spoke to himself. You are perfect. The air all around Asher was thick with electrified atoms, heavy raindrops frozen in midair. For the first time, Asher could understand the world around him down to every last particle. You are good. You are one. One of what? Asher did not understand how to speak like the lightning spoke. Not yet. You are one, it insisted. For us. When Peg found him in the cornfield the next morning, his fingertips had been blackened and the edges of his hair were stuck out and singed. His mother loaded him into the back of the pickup truck and drove him home. He closed his eyes against the water as she washed his newly cropped hair in the kitchen sink. Asher lifted his arms for her to dress him in a knee-length nightshirt. He opened his mouth for her to spoon-feed him broth. He slept mostly. In his sleep, he dreamt about his father, which he had always done, only now he dreamed his father was alive, and he was electric, and he declared, "My son," with the same voice of the lightning. He'd opened his arms, and Asher had run to him, and when they embraced, it was like being touched by lightning, the hot static that ran through him, the sparks growing from his father's eyes and fingertips. Asher's eyes opened early that morning, like a blossom stretching out too soon. The sky was dark, and the day hadn't yet begun. Then Asher saw what had caused him to wake. He saw his mother tapping impatiently at the foot of his bed. "Up, baby," she hissed. "I was on the phone with your doctors. We know what's wrong with you. I made an appointment. Up, up, up." Oh God, Asher moaned internally. She found the poetry. She found the books behind my dresser. She found my CD player. Asher sat up in bed, resistless as a cloth doll as his mother forced a purple t-shirt over his head. She took Asher by both his hands and led him into the driveway. He walked like a comatose patient, rebuilding the muscles in his legs. But inside Asher's chest, he felt the shaking of dry leaves on a windswept branch. I think I bit my tongue, Asher said as his mama opened up the passenger door to load in her cargo. She clucked but said nothing. Asher prodded his cheeks with the back of his fingers. Where are we going? He asked. His mama started up the engine. Asher felt a whine from deep inside him. I figured out what's been so wrong with you, she bragged. She sucked on her teeth. Asher flinched at the abrupt pop. I know you must be confused. Don't worry, honey. Mama's gonna make everything right again. Everything is all right, Mama, said Asher. He was confused. He felt a tingle at the top of his neck. She harumphed. How can everything be all right? My baby got struck by lightning and slept 3 days. 3 days, Asher repeated. He didn't feel like he'd slept 3 days. He didn't feel like he'd been struck by lightning either, for that matter. He felt refreshed yet wide awake, a farm cat sprawled on the barnyard roof before descending to the attic to chase mice. 3 days, but I'm gonna make everything all right, his mama said, pressing down hard on the gas. Mama's here now. Where are we going, Mama? Asher asked, but she still wouldn't answer. Asher wouldn't get out of the truck at the hospital. When his mother pulled up at the emergency room drop-off, Asher looked at the cement building and crossed his arms. I'm fine, he insisted. I feel fine. Better. It's just a checkup, baby, she pleaded. She pulled on his arm from the curb. She had to hop just to reach his seat. The doctors knew right away when I called. They knew exactly what to do. It's not an uncommon diagnosis, honey, please. Asher stared straight through the windshield and asked, why is it a checkup if they know exactly what's wrong? What are they checking? His mother tugged on his arm, then yelped and pulled away, rubbing her elbow. Ow, she said, but her tone was slow and surprised, not hurt. I feel good, Mama, Asher promised. Let's go home. But they didn't go home. Instead, his mother began shrieking for help. Hospital security flooded the street. Asher's fighting best wasn't enough against them, wasn't nearly enough. They pulled him from the passenger seat. Asher kicked and wriggled, but they wrangled him inside without difficulty. His last look at his mother was of her clutching her purse, trying to follow him in, but being cut off by 2 nurses, directing her back to the curbside car. The automatic door started to slide closed. Security deposited Asher into a dark green pushcart. 4 nurses in surgical masks and scrub caps overwhelmed him. He sat up. They pushed him back down. 3, 2, 1, one counted down, and then a needle with a gauge Asher just knew was too big stuck through his skin and into his vein. The muscles in his hand twitched, and Asher felt sick at the icy sensation of stiff metal inside his body. Stop, 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 said Asher, but suddenly the pushcart was moving and he slid and gripped the sides. Hey, don't you worry your pretty little head, one of the nurses assured him, pulling along an IV stand. You won't feel a thing until we're wheeling you out of the operation room, blissed out and without a care in the world. Next time you wake, you'll be all better. Asher didn't wake up in the operation room or when they were wheeling him out. He woke in some sort of stationary limbo, and he felt as far from blissed out as he'd ever felt. Cold, he tried to say, through the dry cavern of his mouth. His tongue weighed 100 pounds. Like a beached whale he had to somehow speak through. His skin didn't just feel cold, it was prickly. He felt itchy and constrained, nearly mummified. Asher couldn't open his eyes, but he could feel 2 presences over him, 2 sets of breath. He heard the forceful metal snap of a clipboard and then papers being rearranged. You think he'll burn through the org cure and kill himself? No, Asher tried to say. His mouth was so very far away. Could be, the first voice said. Asher wanted to scream. Haven't seen that in a while, though this one's certainly riding high. Let's try to get his temperature down. Asher didn't feel hot. He felt lonely. There was a quietness inside him, like bird bones, hollow. He shrunk down into a space inside himself. His body was a cave. Asher was lost inside of himself.
Wow, that was is that part of a novel or?
It's part of a 19-page story.
I want to hear the rest.
I can, if anybody wants, I can drop my email in the chat, and anyone who wants it can email me because I don't care about sending it around.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mickie also said I would love to read all of it. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was really just a wonderful reading, a wonderful group of readers. Wow. So our next event starts in 4 minutes. I want to tell you that we're taping all the events. So right now we've got last weekend's events up on the Spring Rights events page. And we've also got Friday, and today is Sunday, right? We have Friday. Yeah, I think, did I just, never mind. I have no memory of what I'm talking about. I think I just put up Friday events, and we still have to get Saturday and of course tonight's events up. So the next event, I hope you all stay, is Jay Leeming. So we have 3 minutes till Jay starts. Does any of the people who just spoke have any questions for each other? You know, Gwen questions for Lizzie, Andy questions for Gwen, or you're on mute. I'm asking you to unmute, Gwen. I see your mouth moving. You can unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you are.
My mouth is always moving. So, sound or no. Lizzie, I'd like to know, are you in a writing, class, or are your, as you come up with your ideas, are you sharing them with others, and you get feedback from that?
Yeah, so right now I'm wrapping up. In a couple weeks, I'll be graduated from Hofstra University on Long Island.
Good for you, fantastic.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of classes there. I was in a television minor, so I got to take a lot of TV writing classes. And right now I'm taking a graduate creative writing class. So that's been a great place to workshop ideas and to develop stories. Yeah,
your writing is really, I mean, it has like that, your characters were so engaging and just grabbed you from the beginning, and I just wanted to be with them. So, I think that's probably a benefit of the TV writing courses too. I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, too, I wanted to, I grew up in Los Angeles, and it was a big treat at certain times of the year to go over to the UCLA campus and see their film students and what they had to offer as their final. And Mickie, I thought of them, and I thought of some of the wonderful things that I had seen before, and yours put me right in that. I mean, some of those individuals have gone on and done really wonderful things, and I thought, oh my, yours was just so professional, and it's just very engaging. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. In another life, I was a film student.
Whoa. Okay. It shows. It's so well done. I was very impressed.
Thank you. All of my time spent on the couch during the quarantine watching things has paid off.
Oh, okay.
Able to apply my watching to the making.
Good.
It really is, being able to be mad and, show madness through video and, editing was fun.
Yeah. The dramatic reading. It was all very well done. Very well done. I'm impressed.